After learning that the apartment would not be divided in a divorce, my husband and his mother took me out to the forest, then threw me out of the car in the freezing cold and beat me. After that, they went to a bar, and when they returned home in the morning, they were stunned by what they saw. And before we begin, I ask you to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Thank you, and enjoy listening. Cold. So piercing that it seemed to seep straight into the bones, into the very soul. Catherine was lying in the snow, staring at the black winter sky scattered with indifferent stars, and she couldn't move. Her lips were numb, her fingers had long since lost all feeling, and somewhere in her chest a dull, throbbing pain was spreading. The red taillights of the car had long dissolved into the darkness among the trees, and now only silence surrounded her. That special, muffled silence of the winter forest, which can be more frightening than any scream. How did I end up here? The thought beat in her head like a bird in a cage. But Catherine knew the answer. She knew it too well. And as the cold slowly bound her body, she remembered. She remembered everything from the very beginning. 5 years ago, Catherine was 24. She worked as an accountant at a small construction firm, rented a tiny room in an old apartment building on the outskirts of the city, and dreamed of a normal, calm life. Of her own corner, of a family, of a husband who would love her and take care of her. Simple dreams, the kind millions of girls her age have. Catherine never told acquaintances about her family. Not because she was ashamed, on the contrary, she was proud of her parents, but because she didn't want people to treat her differently. Her father, Robert Harrison, held a serious position in the county prosecutor's office. Her mother, Linda, had worked her entire life as an English language and literature teacher. An ordinary, educated family, if you didn't count her father's position. "Sweetheart, why don't you move back in with us?" her mother would say during their rare family dinners, when her father came home earlier than usual. "Why do you need that room with alcoholic neighbors? Your room is standing empty, waiting for you." "Mom, I'm 24. I'm an adult. I want to live independently," Catherine stubbornly replied, serving herself another portion of her mom's stuffed cabbage rolls. Robert usually stayed silent during these conversations, but deep down he was proud of his daughter. She had grown up not spoiled, not capricious, not used to hiding behind other people's backs. She could have gotten herself a cushy job through her father's connections, lived an easy life, but no. She chose to fight her way up from the very bottom on her own. Character. Real character. True, sometimes that independence bordered on reckless stubbornness, and her father saw that. Catherine was one of those people who would rather break than bend. That quality could be both a strength and a weakness, depending on the circumstances. Marcus Crawford appeared in her life by accident, as often happens with people who later turn everything upside down. They ran into each other at the supermarket near Catherine's place. Literally ran into each other. She didn't notice the tall, dark-haired guy with a basket and crashed into him while turning between the shelves. "Oh, I'm sorry." She looked up and froze. Marcus was handsome, with that special, slightly predatory kind of beauty that drives inexperienced girls crazy. Dark, heavy-lidded eyes, a strong jaw, a dimple in his left cheek when he smiled. And he smiled often charming, inviting, in a way that made you want to smile back. "It's no big deal," he looked at her with a hint of amusement, but without malice. "Did you hurt yourself?" "I'm like a tank, I can knock someone over without meaning to." No, I'm fine." Catherine felt her cheeks turning red. They talked right there by the pasta shelves. Marcus worked as a manager at a car dealership, loved soccer, dreamed of someday opening his own business, a car wash or a tire shop. He spoke well, confidently, with that particular pressure Catherine at the time mistook for strength of character and determination. "And what do you do?" he asked when they were already standing at the checkout. "Accountant. At a construction firm." "Sounds boring, I guess." "Why boring?" "Counting money is important. No business survives without an accountant." Catherine liked that he didn't make a face, didn't joke about boring work. Many guys lost interest when they found out her profession. This one didn't. "Can I have your number?" Marcus asked when they walked out of the store. "I'd like to invite you for coffee. Or dinner. Or wherever you want." Catherine gave him her number. And didn't regret it. At least, that's what it seemed like to her then. Their first date took place in a small Italian restaurant downtown. Marcus was gallant. He pulled out her chair, handed her the menu, placed the order himself after consulting with her. He told funny stories from work, asked about her life, listened attentively to her answers. Catherine felt like a fairy tale princess. "So, what do your parents do?" he asked casually when dessert arrived. Catherine hesitated. She didn't like that question. "Mom's a teacher." "Dad?" "Dad works in public service. A government official." "Oh, really?" Marcus perked up. "In what field?" "Oh, just paperwork. Different documents. Boring job." She tried to change the subject. "What about your parents?" Marcus's expression darkened. "I don't know my father. He left when I was 2. My mom raised me alone. She lives in Riverside now. It's about 100 miles from here. She worked at a factory until it closed. Now she's retired." "That must have been hard." "It was fine, we managed. My mom's a fighter." He smiled, but something hard flashed in his eyes. "She taught me everything. How to stand up for myself, how to make my way in life. Grew up without a father, and I turned out just fine." Catherine nodded, filled with sympathy. A poor boy who grew up without a father. A strong mother who carried the family on her own. It inspired respect. She didn't notice one detail then. When Marcus spoke about his mother, there was not just love in his voice, but a kind of painful adoration. As if his mother wasn't just a close person, but a deity who could not be contradicted. A week later they were officially dating. A month later Marcus said, "I love you" for the first time. 3 months later, he proposed. Catherine was in seventh heaven. The ring wasn't expensive. A thin silver band with a tiny stone, but to Catherine it seemed the most beautiful in the world. Marcus presented it romantically on the roof of a high-rise they climbed at night to look at the stars. He got down on one knee, just like in the movies. "Catherine, I know we haven't known each other long, but I feel that you're the one, my destiny. Will you marry me?" She, of course, said yes. How could she refuse a man like that? Handsome, attentive, with dreams and plans for the future. Catherine believed that together they would build a happy life. When she told her parents about the engagement, the reaction was mixed. Her mother was happy, though with reservations. Her father stayed silent longer than usual. "Aren't you rushing, sweetheart?" he asked cautiously when her mother went to the kitchen to make tea. 3 months is very little time to get to know a person. "Dad, I love him, and he loves me." That's enough. Love is good. But marriage isn't just love. It's everyday life, money, compromises. "Are you sure you know this guy well enough?" "I'm sure." Robert sighed. In 30 years of work at the prosecutor's office, he had seen all kinds of people and long ago learned to see through them. Something about Marcus scratched at his intuition, some falseness in his smile, some theatricality in his gestures. But there were no concrete reasons to worry. The guy was polite, attentive, employed. Maybe the father was just too suspicious. Professional deformation, nothing you can do. You see criminals even where there are none. "All right," he finally said. "You're an adult, it's your decision. But if anything happens, your mom and I are always here. Remember that." "Thank you, Dad." Catherine hugged her father, not noticing the anxiety in his eyes. She was too happy to notice such things. Linda turned out to be more practical. "Where will you live after the wedding?" she asked her daughter a few days later. "Does Marcus have an apartment?" "No, he rents a room, like I do, but we'll figure something out. Maybe we'll rent a bigger place or take out a mortgage." Her mother exchanged a look with her father. They had been saving money for years, setting aside part of every paycheck, giving up vacations abroad, cutting back on everything except the essentials. Originally, they planned to help their daughter with a down payment on a mortgage. But now, looking at her glowing eyes, the decision came naturally. "Catherine," her mother said a few days later, "your father and I talked. We want to give you and Marcus a wedding gift." "What kind of gift?" "An apartment." Catherine stared at her mother, not believing her ears. "Mom, are you serious? That's a huge amount of money. Where did it come from?" "We saved." For many years. For your future. There's a nice 2-bedroom for sale in a new building, not far from downtown. We've already seen it. Good neighborhood, quiet courtyard, a park nearby. You'll like it. Catherine rushed to hug her mother, tears welling up in her eyes. Thank you. Thank you so much. I don't even know what to say. Don't thank us yet. Her mother gently pulled away and looked her daughter in the eyes. There's one condition. What is it? Linda paused, choosing her words. The apartment will be registered in my name. Officially, on paper. But why? Because I'm your mother and I want to protect you. Her mother spoke calmly, but firmly. You never know what can happen in life, Catherine. People change, circumstances change. Today you love each other, and tomorrow. She didn't finish. You'll live in that apartment peacefully for as long as you want. No one will throw you out, I give you my word. But the documents will stay with me. Someday, many years from now, when I'm sure everything is good with you, I'll transfer it to you. Until then, it will stay this way. Catherine frowned. Something about it felt wrong, dishonest. As if her mother already didn't trust her future husband. This feels like deception, she said. It's not deception, it's precaution. Linda took her daughter's hand. Believe me, I've lived long enough to know. It's better to be safe. I'm not saying Marcus is a bad person. But people are different. And when it comes to money, to real estate, she shook her head, I just want you to be protected. No matter what happens. And what should I tell Marcus? Nothing. Let him think it's your shared apartment, bought as a wedding gift. He doesn't need to know the details. Catherine hesitated. On one hand, it felt wrong to start family life with a secret. On the other hand, her mother wanted the best for her. She wasn't a bad person, not an intriguer, just cautious. All right, Catherine finally said. Let it be your way. Linda sighed with relief and hugged her daughter. My smart girl. You won't regret it, you'll see. Catherine had no idea then how prophetic those words would be. She didn't know that her mother's precaution would one day save her life. The wedding was modest but heartfelt. Catherine's parents rented a small banquet hall and a restaurant on the outskirts of the city, invited close relatives and a few friends. Catherine wore a simple white dress bought at a regular store. Puffy crinolines and rhinestones weren't her style. Marcus looked happy. He didn't leave the bride's side for a single step, looked at her with loving eyes, made toasts about how lucky he was to meet such a woman. The guests were touched, her mother secretly wiped away tears. And then Dorothy arrived. Marcus's mother showed up 2 hours late. The bus from Riverside had broken down on the way. Catherine had seen her mother-in-law only once before that, at a brief meeting in a cafe where Marcus formally introduced them. Back then, Dorothy had seemed like an ordinary elderly woman, slightly tired, slightly grouchy, but overall good-natured. Now she was looking at her daughter-in-law with completely different eyes. Dorothy was a large woman, with a heavy gaze and lips that were always pursed. She was wearing an old-fashioned dress of some swampy color, clearly bought back during the recession. Large plastic beads dangled around her neck, cheap rings were on her fingers. She swept the banquet hall with a critical look and snorted disapprovingly. Modest, she threw at her son instead of a greeting. I thought it would be richer. Mom, don't start, Marcus grimaced. It's a normal wedding. Not everyone's a millionaire. That's exactly it, not millionaires. Dorothy shifted her gaze to Catherine and looked her up and down. And the bride's so skinny. Skin and bones. Will you even be able to give birth? Catherine blushed, not knowing what to answer. Marcus just laughed. Mom, come on. It's a wedding, not a medical exam. Get to know her properly. And what am I doing? I am proper. Dorothy extended a dry, bony hand to Catherine. Hello, bride. Welcome to the family. The handshake was cold and somehow formal. Catherine felt an unpleasant chill run down her back, but she pushed the feeling away. The woman was probably just tired from the trip. You shouldn't judge a person by a first impression. At the banquet, Dorothy sat with a sour expression. She nitpicked the food. Too salty, undercooked. They could better back in Riverside. She made remarks to the bride. You laugh too loud. The dress is too revealing. What kind of hairstyle is that, like a boy's? She constantly grabbed her son by the arm and whispered something in his ear. Don't pay attention, Marcus said when they were alone for a minute. Mom's just nervous. She raised me alone, you understand? It's hard for her to let go. I understand, Catherine nodded, although in reality she didn't really. Catherine's parents treated the mother-in-law with restraint. Linda was polite but cold. Robert tried to stay away altogether. His professional instinct sensed something unpleasant about this woman. An interesting aunt, he said to his wife when they stepped out onto the balcony. Hungry eyes, like she's looking for what she can grab. Robert, don't wind yourself up. Just an ordinary provincial woman, offended by life. Maybe. But did you notice how she looked at the apartment when Marcus was talking about the gift? Her eyes practically lit up. Linda sighed. It's good that I insisted on my version with the documents. The longer I look at this Dorothy, the more convinced I am that I did the right thing. After the wedding, the newlyweds moved into the new apartment. A 2-bedroom place, bright, with large windows and a view of the park. Catherine's mother had really done her best. The apartment already had basic furniture, a couch, a bed, a wardrobe, a kitchen set, all new, bought specifically for the move. Marcus walked through the rooms, touched the walls, opened the closets, looked out the windows. His eyes burned with delight. Wow! He hugged his wife and spun her around the room. Catherine, can you imagine? We're owners. Our own apartment. Not rented ours. Catherine smiled, but something stabbed in her chest. Ours? On paper, the apartment belonged to her mother. But what difference did it make? She and Marcus loved each other. They would live here long and happily. It was just a formality, a piece of paper. The main thing was that they were together. We need to buy a TV, Marcus declared, flopping down on the couch. A big plasma one. You have no idea how awesome it'll be to watch soccer on a huge screen. Maybe curtains first? And proper dishes. We don't even have plates. The curtains can wait. And plates? What about plates? We'll eat out of the pot, we won't break. He pulled his wife onto his lap. Don't nag, Catherine. We're owners now. We'll live like kings. Catherine wanted to argue, but stayed silent. A TV, big deal. Men love tech, that's normal. It wasn't worth fighting over such little things. That was the first warning bell. Small, barely noticeable, like the buzz of a mosquito. Catherine waved it off like an annoying insect. And she shouldn't have. The first year of marriage passed relatively calmly. Marcus worked at the car dealership, Catherine in her accounting office. In the mornings they had breakfast together, in the evenings they had dinner together. Sometimes they went to the movies or just walked in the park under their windows. Marcus was attentive, gave flowers on holidays, paid compliments. Catherine felt happy. There were oddities, though. Small, almost invisible, but over time they became more and more obvious. For example, Marcus never introduced his wife to his friends. He said they weren't on her level, that he didn't want Catherine socializing with them. Just riffraff, he explained. Drinking and chasing women, that's all they care about. You'd have nothing to talk about with them. But you hang out with them. I'm a man. I'm supposed to hang out with the guys. And you're my wife. You need different company. Catherine shrugged and didn't insist. Maybe Marcus was right. Why would she need some random guys? Marcus also couldn't stand her parents, especially her father. Your dad looks at me like I'm a criminal, he complained after another family dinner. Literally drills holes in me with his eyes. I'm sick of it. What did I ever do to him? Dad's just that kind of person. He looks at everyone like that. Professional habit. He's a prosecutor. Yeah, a prosecutor. Marcus grimaced. Probably thinks his daughter's pure gold and I'm some penniless bum. Not worthy of Her Majesty. Marcus, what are you making up? I'm not making anything up. I can see how he looks at me, like I'm some kind of cockroach. You can tell your father I'm no worse than him. Maybe I don't have his position or his salary, but I'm an honest man, and my hands grow from the right place. Catherine flinched at that contemptuous tone but tried not to pay attention. She convinced herself it was male pride, that Marcus just didn't want to feel worse than others. Over time he'd get used to it, calm down. And Marcus started staying late at work more and more often. He came home late, tired, irritated. He answered questions curtly, brushed off conversations. "Where were you?" Catherine asked, meeting her husband at 10 at night. "At work." "Where else?" "Clients wore me out." He tossed his jacket on the hook and went to the TV. "But the dealership closes at 7. "Catherine, don't start. I'm dog-tired. Let me rest." And she didn't start. She didn't want to fight, didn't want to be a nagging wife. She convinced herself that a sales manager's job really was stressful and hard, that she needed to support her husband, not saw at him with questions. One night Catherine woke up from a strange sound. Marcus was lying next to her, turned toward the wall, and talking on the phone. Quietly, almost in a whisper. "Yes, yes, I understand." "No, she doesn't know." "Of course, we'll see each other soon." Catherine froze, afraid to move. Her heart started pounding fast. Who was he talking to? About what? Who was she? But in the morning, when she carefully asked who had called during the night, Marcus just waved it off. "No one called." "You dreamed it." "But I heard I'm telling you, you dreamed it." "I slept like a log all night." He was lying. Catherine could see it in his eyes, and the faint flush on his cheeks, but she couldn't prove anything and didn't want to argue. That was the second warning bell, already louder than the first. By the end of the first year of marriage, Catherine noticed another unpleasant trend. Marcus started calling his mother more and more often. He talked to her for long stretches, an hour or more, and every time after those conversations he was in a bad mood. "How's Dorothy?" Catherine would ask. "Fine." Complaining about her health. Marcus frowned. Sitting there alone in her hole. No one to help, no one to talk to. Maybe we should invite her to visit? Let her rest. Maybe. Later. Later came sooner than Catherine expected. A year and a half after the wedding, Dorothy called and announced that she was moving in with them. Not coming to visit. Not thinking about stopping by. Moving in. "What do you mean, moving in?" Catherine was stunned when Marcus told her the news. "For good?" "For some time. There are problems with her house. Pipes leaking, the ceiling crumbling. Needs a major renovation. And there's nowhere to live in the meantime." "And how long will this renovation take?" "I don't know. A month, maybe 2, maybe half a year." "Half a year?" "Catherine, that's my mother." Marcus's voice became hard. "I'm not going to throw her out on the street. She has no one but me. If I abandon my own mother in trouble, what kind of man am I?" Catherine wanted to object that their apartment was only 2 rooms, that it was already not very spacious for them, that living under the same roof with her mother-in-law was not at all what she had dreamed of. But she stopped short under her husband's heavy gaze. "All right," she said. "Let her come. We'll manage somehow." She didn't know then that somehow would stretch on for years, and that there had never been any renovation in Dorothy's house to begin with. The mother-in-law arrived with 3 huge bags and the look of a person who planned to stay for a long time. A very long time. She surveyed the apartment with a proprietor's eye, as if assessing her future possessions, and nodded with satisfaction. Not bad, not bad. Could have been worse. She walked through the rooms, looked into the closets, checked the shelves in the refrigerator. "Where's the second room?" "I need a proper bed, my back's bad." "The second room is our bedroom," Catherine said cautiously. "But we can make up the couch for you in the living room." "On the couch?" Dorothy looked at her daughter-in-law as if she had suggested she sleep on the floor. "I have sciatica, dear. I can't sleep on a couch. Only on a firm mattress." "It's no problem," Marcus cut in. "Catherine and I will sleep in the living room." "Right, Catherine?" Catherine opened her mouth to object, but stayed silent. What could she say? That she didn't want to give up her bedroom to a stranger? Dorothy was her husband's mother. An old woman with a bad back. You couldn't be that selfish. Yes, of course, she forced out. Make yourself comfortable. Dorothy smiled that special smile that never reaches the eyes. That's a good girl. I knew we'd get along. From that day on, Catherine's life turned into hell. The mother-in-law criticized everything, literally everything. How the daughter-in-law cooked. Too salty, not salty enough, overcooked, undercooked. We don't do it like that in Riverside. How she cleaned. Dust on the shelves, streaks on the windows, why don't the floors shine? How she dressed. The skirt is too short, the neckline too deep, what kind of color is that, like a clown? How she spoke. Too loud. It all started with nitpicking. What kind of porridge is this? Dorothy frowned, poking at the plate with a spoon. Oatmeal? Ugh, disgusting. I don't eat that. Why didn't you make semolina? Yesterday you said you don't like semolina. I never said that. Don't make things up. Every evening ended with lectures. Marcus, look at the soup your wife made. Dorothy demonstratively pushed the plate away. It's just water. I fed my son a different kind of soup. Rich, with meat. And what is this? Slop. Mom, it's a normal soup, Marcus defended weakly. Normal? You've just never seen anything better. Your wife doesn't know how to cook. That's what. Catherine clenched her teeth and kept silent. She understood that arguments would lead nowhere. Dorothy was one of those people who are always right. In any argument, in any situation, only she is right, and everyone else is wrong. Catherine was especially criticized for the fact that she and Marcus didn't have children. 3 years married and still no belly, the mother-in-law grumbled. What, are you infertile or something? Or you just don't want to give birth on purpose? We're not planning children yet, Catherine explained. We want to get on our feet first, earn some money. Get on your feet, Dorothy mocked. By the time you do, it'll be too late. You're not getting any younger, dear. The biological clock is ticking. During these conversations, Marcus usually stayed silent or went to the TV. He never took his wife's side, never pulled his mother back. At most, he would throw out a weak mom, enough, which Dorothy successfully ignored. After a month of such life, Catherine tried to talk to her husband alone. Marcus, this can't go on. Your mother is driving me crazy. You're exaggerating, he brushed it off. She's an elderly person, she has her quirks. Just endure it a little. A little? How long is that? She's been living here for a month already, and no renovation in her house has even started. How do you know? Did you check? No, but then don't talk about things you don't know. Marcus stood up from the couch. Catherine, that's my mother. And by the way, this is our apartment. She has the right to be here. Our apartment. If only he knew that on paper the apartment wasn't ours at all and not even his. But Catherine kept silent. As always. Several more months passed. The renovation in Dorothy's house still didn't begin. The mother-in-law came up with new excuses. Either the contractors were too expensive, or there were no materials, or the weather wasn't right. Catherine already understood that there would be no renovation and that Dorothy had come for good. But she couldn't prove it. One day, while cleaning her mother-in-law's room, she accidentally knocked over a stack of papers on the dresser. The papers scattered across the floor, and as Catherine picked them up, she noticed a familiar document, a real estate registry extract. Out of curiosity, she looked at it and froze. It was an extract for a house in Riverside. The very house that was supposedly under renovation. Only the owner field was blank, and in the special notes it said, property removed from the register due to sale. Dorothy had sold her house before moving in with them. Catherine put the papers back, feeling rage boiling inside her. There was no renovation. All this time, the mother-in-law had been lying. To her, to Marcus, to everyone. She had deliberately sold the house in order to move in with her son. Into a ready-made life. That evening, Catherine showed her husband a photo of the extract. She couldn't resist and had taken a picture on her phone. Marcus, your mother deceived us. There is no renovation. She sold the house in Riverside. Marcus looked at the photo and frowned. Where did you get this? I found it by accident. But that's not important. What's important is that she lied. She's not living with us temporarily because of renovations. She's not planning to leave at all. Marcus was silent. Then he shrugged. So what? What do you mean, so what? She lied to us. Catherine. His voice turned cold. My mother sold her shack and put the money in an account. For a rainy day. What's wrong with that? What's wrong is that she didn't tell us the truth. And why should she report to us? She's my mother. She can live with us as long as she wants. Catherine looked at her husband, not believing her ears. So you don't care that she lied to us? I do care that you're rummaging through her things. Marcus stood up. She's 63, Catherine. She worked her whole life, raised me alone. She deserves a peaceful old age. If that means she needs to live with us, then she will. And that's the end of it. He went to the TV, making it clear the conversation was over. Catherine remained sitting in the kitchen, feeling like a complete idiot. Her husband had just chosen his mother's side openly, without hiding it. And she? Would she keep enduring it? Or not? That evening, Catherine thought about divorce for the first time. Not as a real option, but as a theoretical possibility. What if she left? What if she stopped all this? But she immediately pulled herself up short. Where would she go? To her parents? Admit that they had been right, that her marriage had turned out to be a mistake? Her pride wouldn't allow it. And besides, she loved Marcus. Or at least she had loved him once. The Marcus who brought flowers and spoke beautiful words. The one who looked at her with adoration on their first date. Where did that person go? Had he never existed at all? Catherine remembered the first months of their relationship and tried to understand what she had missed, what signs she hadn't noticed, whether there had been red flags she had ignored. There were. Of course there were. All of it had been warning bells. Small, quiet, but persistent. Catherine had heard them and ignored them. Because she was in love. Because she wanted to believe in a fairy tale. Now the fairy tale was ending. And on the horizon loomed anything but a happy ending. The next year passed in constant tension. Dorothy firmly settled into the apartment and behaved more and more like the mistress of the place. Now she didn't just criticize her daughter-in-law, she ordered her around like a servant. Catherine, wash my sweater, she shouted from her room. Catherine, bring me some tea. Catherine, why is it so cold in the bathroom? Catherine endured it. She worked, came home, cooked dinner for 3, listened to her mother-in-law's complaints, cleaned, washed, ironed. And so every day. Marcus at that time usually sat in front of the TV or played on his phone. He had no intention of helping around the house. That's women's work, he answered when Catherine asked him to at least take out the trash. I get tired at work, I have the right to rest at home. And I don't get tired. I work too. You sit in an office shuffling papers. That's not work, that's rest. Catherine fell silent. Arguing was useless. Meanwhile, new alarming notes appeared in her husband's behavior. He started staying late after work more often more often he smelled of alcohol. He lied carelessly, without trying very hard to hide it, as if testing how far he could go. And at the same time he became rougher and rougher. Marcus, we could go somewhere, Catherine suggested one day. To the movies, to a restaurant. When was the last time we were alone together? I'm sick of it, he snapped. Don't you have anything better to do? Go make dinner. Catherine flinched as if slapped. He hadn't talked to her like that before. Before, he had at least been polite. Marcus, what's happening to you? She tried to take his hand, but he jerked away. Nothing's happening. Just don't get on my nerves with your talks. I'm sick of it. He went into the living room, slamming the door. Dorothy, who had been watching the scene from the hallway, smirked and shook her head, as if saying, see. You can't keep a husband. Catherine stayed alone in the kitchen. She didn't cry, the tears had long since run out. She just stood by the window and looked at the evening city, thinking about how her life had turned into this. Several more months passed. Catherine gradually came to terms with the thought that her marriage was doomed. She no longer tried to change anything, didn't suggest romantic dinners, didn't bring up problems. She just lived. Mechanically, on autopilot. Like a robot executing a daily program. Her parents saw that something was wrong with their daughter. Her mother called every day, asked how things were, whether everything was okay. Catherine answered briefly, "Fine. Everything's good. Don't worry." Linda didn't believe it, but didn't insist. She knew her daughter's character: stubborn, proud, didn't like admitting mistakes. If you pushed, it would only make things worse. Her father was more straightforward. "Daughter, if something happens, call right away," he said during another Sunday dinner. "Me? Any time of day or night. Do you promise?" "Dad, everything's fine." "Catherine." He looked her in the eyes. "Promise." "Okay. I promise." Robert nodded. He saw that his daughter was unhappy. He saw the dark circles under her eyes from lack of sleep, saw her thinner face, her dull gaze. He wanted to grab her, take her home, lock her up and never let her out again. But he understood, he couldn't. Catherine was an adult, she had to make the decision herself. He could only wait and hope that she would come to her senses before something irreparable happened. And Marcus, meanwhile, continued to change. And not for the better. Now he came home drunk almost every evening. Not completely wasted, but enough for him to reek of alcohol and slur his words. He answered questions rudely, snapped back at remarks. Sometimes he and his mother would lock themselves in the kitchen and whisper about something for a long time, and when Catherine came in, they would abruptly fall silent. Something was brewing. Catherine felt it in her skin, in her intuition, with her whole being. Something bad, something frightening. Like a thundercloud on the horizon, still far away, but approaching. One evening, when Marcus was at work and Dorothy had gone to the store, Catherine decided to clean her mother-in-law's room. Not out of curiosity, it just hadn't been cleaned in a long time, and Dorothy herself had no intention of cleaning. While changing the bed linen, Catherine discovered a strange thing. Under the mattress, deep inside, lay a thick notebook with an oilcloth cover. Worn, with bent corners, clearly used often. Catherine hesitated. Going through someone else's things is wrong. But something made her take the notebook and open it. It was a diary. But not an ordinary diary with entries about the weather and moods. It was a plan. A detailed, step-by-step plan of how to destroy her son's marriage and take the apartment. Stage 1, Catherine read, feeling her hands grow cold. Move into the apartment, take the best room. Completed. Stage 2. Turn Marcus against his wife. Constantly criticize her, compare her to me. Show what a bad housekeeper she is, a bad wife. In progress. Stage 3. Find another woman for Marcus. Introduce him to someone suitable. Pretty, compliant, without demands. So that he himself wants a divorce. Stage 4. Divorce. Division of property. Apartment split in half. Marcus takes his share, we sell. Goal. At least $300,000. Next came the calculations. The market value of the apartment, the estimated share after division, the names of some real estate agents, lawyers' phone numbers. Dorothy was preparing thoroughly. Catherine photographed every page, trying not to let her hands shake too much. She put the notebook back in place and left the room. She was shaking. Not from fear, from rage. So that's how it was. All this time, all these nitpicks and insults, it wasn't just a quarrelsome character. It was a plan. A cold, calculated plan to destroy her life. And Marcus. Marcus was part of this plan. Maybe not an active participant, but definitely an accomplice. That same evening, Catherine went to her parents' place. She showed them the photos. Her father stared at the phone screen for a long time, and his face hardened with every line. Bastards, he finally said hoarsely. Vile creatures. Robert, her mother scolded him. What, Robert? Linda, do you see what they're planning? He turned to his daughter. Catherine, you need to leave. Now, immediately, before it's too late. And where will I go? To us. This is your home. You're always welcome here. Catherine shook her head. No, Dad, not yet. I want to understand how far they're willing to go. Sweetheart, her mother took her hand. Why do you need this? Leave now, before it goes too far. Mom, if I just leave like that, they'll win. They'll say I abandoned my husband, that it's my fault. And it's not my fault. And I want to prove that. Her parents exchanged glances. They knew that stubborn glint in their daughter's eyes. Convincing her was impossible. All right, her father sighed. But be careful. And remember, if anything happens, call me. Immediately, without hesitation. Okay, Dad. She hugged her parents and went home. To the apartment that had long since stopped being her home. Over the next few weeks, Catherine lived in a state of constant alertness. She watched her husband, listened to his conversations with his mother. She wrote down everything suspicious in a note on her phone, just in case. Marcus behaved strangely. He became either overly affectionate or abruptly rude, without any transition. Sometimes he looked at Catherine with a long, strange gaze, as if thinking something over. Sometimes he asked odd questions about her job, about her parents, about plans for the future. Dorothy also changed. She stopped criticizing her daughter-in-law, at least out loud. She became deliberately polite, even caring. She offered to help with cooking, asked about work. It was so unlike her that Catherine became even more wary. What are they planning? She thought, lying sleepless on the uncomfortable couch. What is all this showy kindness for? The answer came sooner than she expected. One evening, coming back from work, Catherine saw a strange scene. Marcus was sitting alone in the kitchen. No TV, no phone. Just sitting and staring out the window. Dorothy was gone, probably to the store again. Hi, Catherine said, taking off her jacket. You're early today. Catherine. Marcus's voice sounded different. Not rude, not indifferent, more tense. Sit down, we need to talk. She sat down across from him, feeling everything inside tighten with anxiety. About what? Marcus was silent, drummed his fingers on the table, looked out the window, then at her. About us, he finally said. About our future. Catherine was silent, waiting. I was thinking. Marcus faltered. We've been together 5 years. 5 years, Catherine. So what? No kids. No happiness. You don't understand me, I don't understand you. And what are you getting at? He finally looked her in the eyes. And Catherine saw something new in his gaze, something cold and calculating, just like his mother's. I think, he paused, I think we need to have a serious talk. About everything. About the apartment, about money, about how we live on together or don't. Catherine felt her heart skip a beat. Here it was. It had begun. Okay, she said, trying to keep her voice from trembling. Let's talk. At that moment, the front door slammed. Dorothy had returned. Marcus glanced toward the hallway and stood up. Not today, he said. Tomorrow. Tomorrow we'll discuss everything. He went to the TV, leaving Catherine alone in the kitchen. She sat motionless, staring into emptiness, thinking that tomorrow her life would change forever. She didn't yet know how right she was. That night Catherine couldn't fall asleep for a long time. She lay on the couch, listening to her mother-in-law snoring behind the wall, and thought about what would happen tomorrow. Marcus was clearly going to announce a divorce, it was obvious. And he was surely counting on half the apartment. Tell him the truth? That the apartment was in her mother's name, that there was nothing to divide? She could. But what would he do when he found out? How would he react? And most importantly, how would Dorothy react? Catherine remembered her mother-in-law's diary. Those cold, calculating lines. Goal $300,000. These people had lived next to her for 5 years, eaten her food, slept in her apartment, and all this time had been planning how to rob her. They wouldn't just stop. If they found out the apartment wouldn't go to them. Catherine turned on her side and closed her eyes. Whatever happened tomorrow, she had to be ready. She had to be strong. She was a prosecutor's daughter, after all. Not some helpless sheep. Outside, the wind howled. January had been cold, -4 degrees Fahrenheit, maybe even lower. The city was falling asleep under snow, people wrapped themselves in coats and down jackets. A good time to stay home, drink hot tea, and watch the snowstorm through the window. But Catherine had no time for tea. A conversation awaited her that would change everything. She finally slipped into a restless sleep, full of strange images. A snow-covered forest, red taillights of a car, a starry sky overhead. She dreamed she was lying in the snow and couldn't get up, and somewhere far away a wolf was howling, long and mournful, like a cry. She woke up in a cold sweat, not understanding where she was. It was still dark outside. There were only a few hours left before the conversation. Catherine sat on the couch, hugging her knees, and waited for dawn. Morning came gray and damp. Snow was falling outside in large flakes, as if someone up there were shaking out a giant feather bed. Catherine got up before everyone else, made breakfast, and sat down to wait. Marcus appeared in the kitchen around 9. Unshaven, rumpled, with red eyes. It was obvious he hadn't slept well either. "Coffee?" Catherine asked. "Sure." She poured him a cup and set it on the table. Marcus took a sip and grimaced, either from the bitterness or from something else. "Where's Mom?" he asked. "Still sleeping, probably." "Good." He set the cup aside and looked at his wife. "Catherine, we need to talk." "Seriously?" "I'm listening." Marcus was silent, gathering his thoughts. Then he exhaled and said, "I want a divorce." 3 words. Just 3 words. But they fell between them like a wall. Catherine felt something break inside her. Not from surprise, she had been expecting it. More from the finality. That was it. 5 years of marriage and 3 words at the end. "Why?" she asked calmly. "Because we've become strangers. You don't understand me, I don't understand you. We live like neighbors, not like husband and wife. Why continue this comedy? And how long have you known this?" Marcus looked away. "For a long time. I just didn't dare say it." Catherine looked at the man she had lived with for 5 years. At his slumped shoulders, the nervously twitching corner of his mouth, the hands gripping the cup. Once she had loved this man. Once she had believed they would be together for the rest of their lives. How naive she had been. "Fine," she said. "Divorce, then divorce." Marcus jerked his head up, blinking in surprise. "You're not going to argue? What's the point? If you've decided, you've decided. You can't force someone to love you." He had clearly expected a different reaction. Tears, hysteria, pleading. But Catherine sat calmly, hands folded on the table, and looked at him without any expression. It made him nervous, she could see that. "Well, okay." Marcus cleared his throat. "Since you agree, let's discuss the details. Property and all that." "What property?" "What do you mean, what property?" "The apartment." He looked at her with poorly hidden greed. "By law, jointly acquired property is divided in half in a divorce. That means half the apartment is mine." There it was. Catherine barely smiled. All that talk about "we've become strangers" was just a prelude. The main thing was the apartment. The money. $300,000, as Dorothy had written in her diary. "Marcus," she said slowly, "this apartment is not divided." "What do you mean, why not?" "Because it's not ours. It never was." Marcus frowned. "I don't understand. We've lived here for 5 years. This is our home. We live here, yes. But on paper the apartment belongs to my mom. She bought it before our wedding and registered it in her name. We're just tenants. Rent-free tenants." Marcus's face stretched out. He stared at his wife as if she were crazy. "You're joking." "What jokes?" "You can check the property registry. The owner is Linda Harrison. My mother." But that's impossible." Marcus's voice broke into a shout. We've 5 years. You said it was our apartment. I said we live here. That's true. And you assumed ownership yourself. Marcus jumped up, knocking over the chair. His face turned purple, veins bulged on his neck. You're lying. You're lying. This is our apartment. Jointly acquired. Marcus, calm down. Don't you dare tell me what to do. He slammed his fist on the table so hard the cups jumped. Mom was right. She said you were a sly bitch, that you'd scheme something. And you did scheme something. Catherine stood up, stepping back. She had never seen her husband like this, with his face twisted with rage, with a mad gleam in his eyes. This was not the Marcus she knew. This was someone else, someone frightening. Where are the documents? He yelled. Show me the documents. The documents are with my mom. If you want, go to her and ask. I don't believe you. You're lying to screw me over. At that moment, the kitchen door flew open, and Dorothy appeared in the doorway. She was wearing a robe, her hair disheveled. Apparently she had woken up from the shouting. What's going on here? Her gaze darted from her son to her daughter-in-law. Marcus, what happened? Mom, Marcus was choking with rage. She says the apartment isn't ours, that it's registered to her mommy. Dorothy froze. Then she slowly turned to Catherine. Is that true? Yes. Catherine met her gaze. It's true. The apartment has belonged to my mother from the very beginning. The mother-in-law was silent. Her face turned to stone, her eyes narrowed into slits. Catherine could see something happening behind those eyes, some calculations, some plans collapsing and being rebuilt. You deceived us, Dorothy finally said. Her voice was quiet, almost hissing. For 5 years you led us by the nose. I didn't deceive anyone, I just didn't talk about the details. Those are different things. Different? The mother-in-law stepped toward her. My son married you thinking you'd have a normal family, a normal home. And you. Your son married me because he loved me. Or pretended to love me. Catherine spoke calmly, though everything inside her was trembling. And the apartment? It's just an apartment. A roof over our heads. We lived in it, and I didn't kick you out. What else do you want? What do we want? Dorothy shrieked. We want what's owed to us. By law. By law, you're owed nothing. The apartment was bought before the marriage and registered to a third party. In a divorce it is not divided. I didn't make that up. That's family law. The mother-in-law opened her mouth but couldn't find an answer. Marcus stood nearby, breathing heavily, and looked at his wife with such hatred that Catherine felt uneasy. You'll pay for this, he hissed. Think you're smarter than everyone? Think you can just screw us over and run? I didn't screw anyone over, and I wouldn't advise you to threaten me. Or what, you'll go crying to Daddy. He smirked crookedly. To your prosecutor. Catherine flinched. How did he know? She had never told him about her father's position. Oh yes, I know. Marcus saw her reaction and grinned wider. You thought I wouldn't find out? Robert Harrison, Deputy District Prosecutor. Big shot. I looked it up a long time ago. So what? So the fact that you've spent your whole life hiding behind Daddy's back. Our little modest one. I did it myself, I'm independent. And in reality, Daddy's girl, everything handed to you on a silver platter. Catherine felt anger boiling inside her. 5 years she had endured it. 5 years she had kept quiet, given in, tried to save the family. And this was the gratitude. You know what, Marcus, she said, her voice turning hard. I really am a prosecutor's daughter. And yes, my parents bought this apartment. For me. Not for you. Not for your mommy. For me. Because they love me and want to protect me. From things like. She swept her gaze around the kitchen. From situations like this. You took us for fools. Dorothy shouted. I took you for normal people. Apparently, I was mistaken. Catherine picked up her phone from the table. That's it, the conversation is over. I'm going to my parents. I'll pick up my things later. She headed for the door, but Marcus blocked her path. Where do you think you're going? Step aside. You're not going anywhere. He grabbed her arm. We're not done talking. Let me go. Right now. Or what? Catherine looked him in the eyes. Or I'll call my father, and in 15 minutes there will be a police unit here. Marcus hesitated. His fingers on her arm twitched, loosened. Catherine took advantage of the moment and broke free. Don't you dare follow me, she threw over her shoulder as she went into the hallway. And I advise you to move out of the apartment. My mom can demand that you vacate the premises at any moment. She grabbed her jacket, shoved her feet into her boots, and bolted out the door. Already on the stairwell she heard Dorothy shouting something and Marcus swearing loudly. To hell with it. She wasn't going to listen to this anymore. Outside it was cold. About 5 degrees Fahrenheit, maybe less. Snow was coming down in sheets, the wind lashed her face. Catherine walked toward the bus stop without really seeing where she was going, thinking of only one thing to get to her parents. Her phone vibrated in her pocket. Marcus. She declined the call. He called again and again and again. Then messages started pouring in. Come back home. We need to talk. Catherine, don't be stupid. Let's settle everything nicely. You have no right to do this to me. Answer, bitch. Catherine turned off the sound and put the phone away. Her hands were shaking. Not from the cold, from nerves. 5 years. 5 years she had lived with this man, slept in the same bed with him, cooked his food. And all this time he saw in her only. What? A source of income? A way to get an apartment? At the stop she had to wait about 20 minutes. Buses ran poorly in that weather. Catherine stood under the shelter, stomping her feet to keep warm, and didn't notice a car pull up beside her. Catherine. She turned around. Marcus was leaning out of the window of an old Honda. Dorothy was sitting in the passenger seat. Get in, we'll give you a ride, he said almost gently. It's cold. No, thanks. I'll take the bus. Oh, come on. We'll talk on the way. Calmly, without yelling. Marcus, I said no. He got out of the car and came toward her. Close. Too close. Catherine pressed her back against the wall of the stop. Catherine. He spoke quietly, but there was something in his voice that sent chills down her spine. Don't do anything stupid. Get in the car. We'll just talk. I have nothing to talk to you about. You do. He moved even closer. You wouldn't want your father to have problems, would you? Prosecutor, a visible position, anything can happen. Catherine went cold. Are you threatening me? I'm warning you. In a friendly way. Marcus smiled, and that smile made her shudder. Get in the car, Catherine. Please. There was no one else at the stop besides them. The snow was falling thicker and thicker, visibility dropped to a few yards. If she screamed, no one would hear. If she ran, he'd catch her. Catherine frantically tried to think what to do. All right, she said. Okay, let's go. Marcus nodded with satisfaction and opened the back door. That's a good girl. Catherine got into the car. Marcus slammed the door, walked around the Honda, and got behind the wheel. Dorothy turned around, looking at her daughter-in-law with a triumphant smile. There we go, she said. That's better. Now we'll talk like civilized people. The car pulled away. Catherine looked out the window at the houses passing by and thought that she had made a mistake. A big mistake. At first everything went normally. Marcus drove in silence. Dorothy didn't open her mouth either. Catherine sat in the back seat, clutching her phone in her pocket, and waited. They passed the city center, then the residential neighborhoods. Catherine grew alert. This wasn't the route. Where are we going? She asked. We'll take a little drive, Marcus answered without turning around. We need to talk without extra ears. We can talk in the city. Stop the car. Nope. It's noisy in the city. We need quiet. Catherine reached for the door handle, but it didn't budge. Child lock. She pulled harder. Useless. Open the door. Her voice trembled. Sit still. Dorothy turned around from the front seat. No one's going to hurt you. We'll just talk. I want to get out. Right now. Wanting doesn't hurt. The car turned off the highway onto a dirt road. There was even more snow here. The wheels slipped. The Honda crawled along. The forest closed in on both sides. Trees stood like silent guards, buried in white. Catherine looked around for something to use as a weapon, a tool, anything. There was nothing on the back seat except an old blanket and an empty plastic bottle. Finally, the car stopped. Marcus turned off the engine and turned toward his wife. We're here. Where is here? What is this place? A quiet place. For serious conversations. He got out of the car, walked around it, and opened the back door. Get out. Catherine didn't move. I'm not going anywhere. Get out, Marcus repeated, his voice turning hard. I'm asking nicely. And if I don't? He grabbed her arm and yanked her out of the car. Catherine cried out in pain. His grip was iron. Let go, you'll break my arm. I won't if you behave yourself. Dorothy also got out of the car and stood next to her son. They looked at Catherine. 2 against 1. In the middle of a snow-covered forest, far from people and help. So, daughter-in-law, the mother-in-law said with a venomous smile. Shall we talk? Catherine stood in the snow, feeling the cold seep through her thin jacket. The wind howled in the treetops, snowflakes stung her face. Her legs were already starting to go numb. Her boots were fall boots, not meant for such cold. What do you want? She asked, trying to keep her voice steady. What do we want? Marcus laughed. Nothing much. Justice. What kind of justice? You messed with our heads for 5 years, Dorothy cut in. Pretended to be a good wife, while hiding the apartment and taking us for fools. You think that's fair? I didn't deceive anyone. The apartment was my mom's from the very beginning. You didn't ask, I didn't tell. Didn't tell? The mother-in-law shrieked. You should have. We had the right to know. What right? It's not your property. It's my family's property. Your family is Marcus. Dorothy jabbed a finger toward her son. Your husband, and you betrayed him. Catherine shook her head. Betrayed? For 5 years I cooked, washed, cleaned, put up with your nitpicking, your insults, didn't say a word when you moved into my mom's apartment and took the best room. That's called betrayal? Don't twist things. Marcus stepped toward her. This is about the apartment. It should be split in half, by law. Marcus, how many times do I have to explain it to you? This apartment is not jointly acquired property. It was bought before the marriage by my parents and registered to my mother. In a divorce, it is not divided. That's the law. Don't like it, go to court. Court? He bared his teeth. You think I'm going to sue a prosecutor's daughter? I'd get crushed there and no one would even notice. That's your problem. No, Catherine, that's our problem. He stepped very close, looming over her. And we're going to solve it now. Once and for all. Catherine stepped back, but behind her there was only forest. What are you going to do? Nothing special. Just talk. Marcus grabbed her by the shoulders. You will transfer the apartment to me. Voluntarily. What? I can't do that. The apartment isn't mine. Then you'll talk your mommy into it. You'll call her and say you want to give your husband a gift. She won't refuse you, right? You're insane. Maybe. Marcus shook her so hard her teeth clattered. But you don't have a choice, got it? Either you do what I say, or dash or what? He didn't answer. He just hit her. A backhand, across the face. Catherine gasped and fell into the snow. Her head rang, circles swam before her eyes. Marcus, be careful. Dorothy snapped. Don't cripple her too early. Don't teach me, Mom, I know what I'm doing. He grabbed Catherine by the hair and jerked her to her feet. She moaned in pain. Well, have you changed your mind? He asked almost gently. Or should I add some more? Go to hell. A blow to the stomach. Catherine doubled over, gasping for air. Marcus released her hair, and she fell back into the snow. Wrong answer, he said. Let's try again. You're going to call your mom and say you want to transfer the apartment. Yes or no? Catherine lay in the snow, feeling the pain spread through her body. Her lip was split, her mouth tasted salty with blood, her stomach burned with fire. No, she croaked. Never. Marcus sighed. Well, suit yourself. He kicked her in the side. Then again. And again. Dorothy stood nearby and watched without interfering. Only occasionally giving advice. Don't hit the head. There will be marks. Catherine tried to cover herself with her arms, curl into a ball, but the blows rained down from all sides. The pain was so intense she could no longer scream, only rasp and groan. At some point it stopped. Marcus stepped back, breathing heavily. Last chance, he said. Do you agree? Catherine lay in the snow, staring at the gray sky. Her whole body was one solid pain. She couldn't feel her arms or legs, only cold and pain. Pain and cold. No, she whispered barely audibly. Stubborn idiot. Dorothy came up and spat in her face. You'll die here, and no one will find you. Got it? No one. Let's go, Mom. Marcus took his mother by the hand. She's useless. Let her lie here and think. Maybe by morning she'll come to her senses. And if she doesn't? Then. Dorothy shrugged. Then it's her problem. They walked to the car. Catherine heard the doors slam, the engine start. Then the sound of the car driving away grew quieter and quieter until it dissolved into the howl of the wind. She was alone. In the forest. In the snow. At 4 degrees Fahrenheit. For the first few minutes, Catherine just lay there, unable to move. The pain was everywhere. In her ribs, her stomach, her head. Every breath sent a sharp stab through her chest. Something was probably broken. Then fear came. Real, animal fear of death. She would die here. Freeze to death in the middle of the forest, and no one would find her. In spring, when the snow melted, mushroom pickers would stumble upon her body. No. No, no, no. She wouldn't give up. She was a prosecutor's daughter. Not some helpless victim. Catherine tried to get up. The first attempt failed. Her arms buckled, and she fell face-first into the snow. The second attempt. The third. On the fourth she managed to get up on her knees. She looked around. Forest everywhere. Endless, white, silent. Somewhere in the distance she could make out a clearing, probably the road they had come on. She needed to get there. She needed to reach the road, find people. Catherine tried to stand, but her right leg wouldn't obey. Sharp pain shot through her ankle. A sprain? A fracture? It didn't matter. She had to go. She limped toward the clearing, leaning on trees. Every step was agony, the pain unbearable. But she went. Because stopping meant dying. How much time passed? An hour? 2? Catherine didn't know. The sky above darkened. Evening was coming. The frost intensified. Her fingers and her gloves had long since gone numb, her face turned into an icy mask. Finally she reached the road. A narrow dirt road buried in snow, no tire tracks, no people. Which way? Right or left? Catherine couldn't remember which direction they had come from. She chose at random. To the right. And trudged on. Limping, stumbling, falling, and getting up again. The cold sank deeper and deeper, her consciousness began to blur. Images flickered before her eyes. Her parents, childhood, Marcus with a bouquet of flowers on their first date. Don't stop, she kept telling herself. Don't stop, or you'll die. She didn't know how much farther she went. Maybe a mile. Maybe 2. At some point a light flickered ahead, dim, yellowish. A lantern, a house window. Catherine quickened her pace as much as she could. The light grew closer. It was a house, a small wooden house on the edge of the forest. A ranger station? A hunter's cabin? It didn't matter. There were people there. There was warmth. She hobbled to the door and knocked. Or rather, tried to knock. She only had enough strength for a weak scrape against the wood. Then her legs gave out, and Catherine collapsed onto the porch. The last thing she saw was the door opening and someone bending over her. My God, girl, are you alive? Then everything went dark. Catherine came to in warmth. She was lying on something soft, covered with several blankets. A stove crackled nearby. It smelled of firewood and something edible. She's awake, a man's voice rang out. Thank God. She turned her head, the movement sent pain through her whole body, and she saw an elderly man in boots and a warm jacket. A kind, weathered face with a thick gray beard. Where am I? Her voice was hoarse and barely audible. At my place. I'm a ranger, name's Mike. You collapsed on my porch, half dead. He shook his head. Who did this to you? You're covered in bruises, your leg is swollen. Catherine tried to sit up, but the man stopped her. Lie still, lie still. I called an ambulance, they'll be here soon. Looks like you've got broken ribs and frostbite. I don't understand how you even made it here. What time is it? She asked. 8 in the evening. Mike handed her a mug with something hot. Here, drink. Tea with honey. Warm up. Catherine took a sip. The hot liquid burned her throat, but it helped. Her thoughts began to clear. I need to make a call, she said. My father. Urgently. Do you have a phone? They took it. She remembered Dorothy snatching it. Do you have one? I do. Old, but it works. Mike pulled out a button phone. Here, call. Catherine dialed her father's number. 1 ring. 2. 3. Hello? Robert's voice was tense. Who is this? Dad. She couldn't hold back the tears. Dad, it's me. Catherine? My God, where are you? We've been looking for you since morning. Your mom is losing her mind. Dad, Her voice broke. Marcus and his mother. They. What? What did they do? Catherine told him briefly, disjointedly, swallowing tears about the conversation in the kitchen, the car, the forest, the beating, and how they left her to die in the snow. There was silence on the other end. Then Robert spoke, and his voice was one Catherine had never heard before, cold, terrifying. Where are you now? With some ranger. His name is Mike. He called an ambulance. Put him on the phone. Catherine handed over the phone. Mike listened, nodded, gave the address. Got it, got it. I'll wait. Yes, alive, alive. Beaten up badly, but alive. He handed the phone back to Catherine. Your father said he's coming himself and calling the police. Mike looked at her sympathetically. Who did this to you, girl? Some kind of animals. My husband, Catherine said bitterly. Ex-husband. Mike shook his head and said nothing, just added more wood to the stove and covered Catherine with another blanket. The ambulance arrived 40 minutes later. The paramedic, a young woman with tired eyes, examined Catherine and whistled. Wow. At least 3 broken ribs, a concussion, 2nd-degree frostbite on the fingers and toes, multiple hematomas. You're lucky you survived. I know, Catherine said. Who did this? My husband. The paramedic darkened. Bastard, excuse the expression. She took out a syringe. I'll give you painkillers now and we'll go to the hospital. You need x-rays and wound treatment. Catherine nodded. After the injection, the pain eased a little, and her thoughts became clearer. She thought about Marcus and Dorothy. Where were they now? What were they doing? Probably celebrating. Thinking they had gotten rid of her, that she had frozen to death in the forest, and that no one would ever know the truth. How wrong they were. Catherine was brought to the hospital around 9 in the evening. She was immediately taken for x-rays, then to the operating room. One of the rib fragments was threatening to puncture her lung. Urgent intervention was required. The surgery lasted 2 hours. When Catherine came out of anesthesia, her parents were sitting by her bed. Her mother was crying, her father was holding her hand, his face gray, as if he had aged 10 years. "Sweetheart." Linda leaned over her. "How are you?" "Alive," Catherine whispered. "It just hurts a lot. The doctor said you're a fighter, you'll pull through." Her mother stroked her hair. "We were so scared. When you didn't answer the calls, I almost lost my mind. They took my phone." "They?" Catherine stopped short, remembering. "We know." Her father spoke quietly, but every word fell like a stone. "You told me everything, I wrote it all down." "Dad." "Don't worry, sweetheart." Robert squeezed her hand. "They will answer for everything. I promise you." In his eyes Catherine saw something she had never seen before. Not just anger. Cold, calculating determination of a man who knows exactly what he is going to do. And will do it. "Where are they?" she asked. "Marcus and his mother." "Unknown for now. But we'll find them. A search has already been issued. They think I'm dead. All the better." Her father smiled grimly. "Let them think that. Not for long." At that very time, 30 miles from the hospital, Marcus Crawford and Dorothy were sitting in a roadside bar drinking whiskey. "So, Mom?" Marcus raised his glass. "To freedom. To freedom." Dorothy clinked glasses with her son. They drank and chased it with a pickled cucumber. Both were in high spirits, almost festive. "You think she—" "Well." Marcus didn't finish. "In that kind of cold." Dorothy waved her hand. 2 hours at most, and that's it. She'll freeze. And if they find her? Who's going to find her? It's the middle of nowhere. 10 miles to the nearest house. By the time anyone notices, by the time they start searching. She snorted. "Maybe they'll find her in spring, when the snow melts." Marcus nodded, but something bothered him. "And if she survives?" "She won't survive. I'm telling you, she won't." Dorothy patted her son's hand. "Don't think about it. Think about the future. Now we're free. We'll find you a normal wife, without issues. We won't get the apartment, of course, but at least we got rid of that idiot." "Yeah." Marcus poured another round. "Stubborn bitch. I thought she'd get scared and do what I said. But she just kept saying no. That's her breed." The mother-in-law curled her lip disdainfully. "Prosecutor's daughter, damn it. Thought she was the smartest." "Well, now it doesn't matter anymore." "Doesn't matter," Dorothy agreed. "Let's drink some more." They drank until the bar closed. Then they got into the car and drove home, to the very apartment they had never managed to get. It was about 4 in the morning when the old Honda parked by the building. Marcus and Dorothy got out of the car, swaying from the alcohol. The street was quiet, deserted, only the snow crunching underfoot. "Home," Dorothy said, yawning. "I'm dying to sleep." "Yeah." They went up to the 3rd floor. Marcus took out the keys, put them into the lock and froze. The apartment door was sealed. Yellow tape, an official paper with a crest and a stamp. What the dash he didn't finish. Footsteps sounded behind them. Marcus turned and saw 4 people in uniform. "Police." Marcus Crawford, one of them asked, a middle-aged man with captain's insignia. "Yes." "What's going on?" "You are under arrest on suspicion of attempted murder." The captain took out handcuffs. "Hands on your head." "What attempted murder? Are you crazy?" Marcus backed away. "I didn't do anything. We'll sort it out." The captain nodded to his men. "Take them both." Marcus was restrained in seconds. Dorothy tried to break free, shouting about lawlessness and abuse of power, but she was quickly subdued as well. "You have no right," Marcus shouted as they dragged him down the stairs. "I didn't do anything. This is a mistake." "A mistake?" The captain smirked. Your wife is alive, Crawford. She's in the hospital and has already given a statement. So there's no mistake here. Marcus went pale. How? Alive? Alive and kicking. Well, relatively. After what you did to her. The captain opened the door of the police van. Get in. We'll talk at the station. They were driven through the night city. Marcus sat in handcuffs, staring at one spot. Dorothy sobbed quietly beside him. How did she survive? He muttered. How could she survive? He didn't understand that Catherine was a prosecutor's daughter. Or rather, he knew, but didn't think it mattered. He thought, so what, Daddy's some boss, what could he do? Turned out, a lot. Robert Harrison didn't wait for morning. Immediately after his daughter's call, he mobilized everyone he could. Colleagues from the prosecutor's office, contacts in the police, the investigative committee. Crawford's car was put on a countywide alert. A unit was sent to the apartment to seal it and wait. When Marcus and his mother returned home, they were already expected. Do you know who her father is? The captain asked, looking at Marcus in the rearview mirror. I know. Marcus's voice was dull, crushed. And you did it anyway? I didn't think. I didn't know she'd survive. Exactly. The captain shook his head. You didn't think. And you should have. The car turned toward the police station. Marcus looked out the window at the passing streetlights and realized that his life was over. The life he had known. His mother cried softly beside him. Learning that the apartment was not divided in a divorce, the husband and his mother took her out to the forest, then threw her out of the car in the freezing cold and beat her. After that they went to a bar to celebrate their freedom, and when they returned home in the morning, they froze at what they saw. Catherine learned about the arrest only the next day. Her father came to the ward with a bouquet of flowers and news. They got both of them, he said, sitting down by the bed. At night, near the apartment. They're in jail now, giving statements. What are they facing? Catherine asked. A lot. Kidnapping, grievous bodily harm, attempted murder. Her father counted on his fingers. Given the circumstances, abandonment and danger with aggravating factors. They deliberately chose a place far from people, deliberately in freezing weather. That qualifies as intent to kill. And how much will they get? I can't say for sure, the court will decide. But I think at least 10 years. Each. Catherine leaned back against the pillow. 10 years. Marcus would serve 10 years. Dorothy too. Strangely, she felt no satisfaction. Only emptiness and exhaustion. Dad, she said quietly. Thank you. For what? For you and Mom being right. From the very beginning. Robert took his daughter's hand. We didn't want to be right, sweetheart. We wanted you to be happy. I know. They fell silent. Outside the window, the winter sun was shining, snow lay on the windowsill. What now? Catherine asked. Now you recover. Then the trial, and then. Her father shrugged. Then you live on. You have everything ahead of you, sweetheart. You're strong. You'll manage. Catherine nodded. Yes, she would manage. She was a prosecutor's daughter. She wasn't one to give up. But first she still had a lot to get through. The investigation, interrogations, the trial. Marcus's looks from the defendant's cage. Dorothy's shouts about injustice. All of that lay ahead. The hospital ward became Catherine's home for 3 weeks. 3 weeks of 4 drips, injections, bandages. 3 weeks of pain that gradually receded, giving way to a dull, aching fatigue. The doctor said she was lucky. The rib fragment stopped a millimeter from the lung. A little more, and everything could have ended differently. Her mother came every day. She brought homemade food, fresh fruit, books. She sat by her side, held her hand, told insignificant news about neighbors, about the weather, about a cat that had appeared in their building. Catherine understood that her mother was trying to distract her from dark thoughts and was grateful for it. Her father came less often. He was busy. The case against Marcus and Dorothy was gaining momentum, and Robert, although formally not participating in the investigation because of a conflict of interest, kept his finger on the pulse. "We got a good investigator," he said during one of the visits. "Young, but sharp. Digging deep." "What are they saying?" Catherine asked. "Marcus and his mother?" "At first they denied everything. They said you left on your own, got lost in the forest yourself." Her father smirked. But when they were presented with the forensic results, they shut up. "What forensic results?" "Your injuries, sweetheart. 3 broken ribs, a crack in the ankle, a concussion, multiple hematomas. That's not got lost. That's a targeted beating. The expert laid it all out, what blows, in what sequence, with what force." Robert paused. "Plus the ranger's testimony. Plus footage from the gas station cameras where they stopped on the way. Plus witnesses from the bar who saw them celebrating." "Celebrating?" Catherine gave a bitter smile. "They were celebrating my death." "Yes, and that's in the case too. Aggravating circumstances, special cruelty, and cynicism." Catherine turned to the window. Outside, snow was falling, soft and fluffy, nothing like the snow in which she had almost died. "Dad," she said quietly, "I don't want to see them. Ever. You'll have to, sweetheart. In court. You're the key prosecution witness." "I know. But after the trial, never." Robert nodded. "After the trial, they'll be locked up for a long time. You simply won't have any chance to see them." On the 10th day, an investigator came to the hospital, the same young, capable one her father had mentioned. His name was James Peterson, about 30 years old, no more. Thin, wearing glasses, with attentive gray eyes. "Catherine," he sat down on a chair beside the bed. "How are you feeling?" "Better, thank you. I understand this is hard for you, but I need to ask a few questions. For the record. Are you ready?" Catherine nodded. For the next 2 hours she told everything. From the very beginning. How she met Marcus, how she got married, how their relationship gradually changed. About the mother-in-law, about her move, about the notebook with the plan to take the apartment, about that last day, the conversation in the kitchen, the car, the forest. James took notes, occasionally asking clarifying questions. His face remained impassive, but Catherine saw something in his eyes. Not pity, rather, understanding. "The mother-in-law's notebook," he said when Catherine finished. "You say you photographed it?" "Yes, but my phone was taken." "By Dorothy." "We found your phone." "In her bag." The investigator took out a plastic evidence bag with the phone inside. "The photos are intact. This is very important evidence." "Really?" "Really. That notebook is proof of prior conspiracy. They planned everything in advance. Not just a fight that got out of hand, they planned it. That changes the charges." Catherine felt a strange sense of relief. She hadn't risked it for nothing back then, she hadn't photographed those pages for nothing. Her caution, her mother's lessons, had worked again. "What kind of sentence are they realistically facing?" she asked. "In short, a lot." James put the phone back into the bag. "Kidnapping up to 15 years. Intentional infliction of grievous bodily harm up to 8. Attempted murder up to 15. Plus aggravating factors by a group acting in prior conspiracy, with special cruelty, against a knowingly helpless person." "I wasn't helpless," Catherine objected. "At the moment of the beating, you were. 1 against 2 in a deserted place, without communication. That qualifies as a helpless state." He paused. "Catherine, I'll be honest with you. This is a high-profile case. Your father is a well-known figure in the county. The media have already caught wind of it, they'll start writing soon. You'll need to be strong." "I can handle it." "I don't doubt it." He stood up and put the papers into a folder. "If you remember anything else, call any time." He placed a business card on the bedside table. "And one more thing. Hold on. You're doing great." Catherine watched him leave. Strangely, the words of a stranger made it easier. As if someone had finally acknowledged that she wasn't a victim, but a fighter. Catherine was discharged in early February. 3 weeks in the hospital, then another month recovering at home. The ribs healed slowly, the cast on her leg made walking difficult, headaches from the concussion came in waves. But Catherine didn't complain. She was alive, and that was what mattered. Her parents insisted that she move in with them. Catherine couldn't and didn't want to return to that apartment. Too many bad memories. Her mother had already started looking for a buyer. We'll sell it and buy you another one, in a new area. You'll start with a clean slate. The divorce was finalized quickly, a month after her discharge. Marcus signed all the documents in jail without objection. Apparently, he understood that arguing was pointless. Catherine didn't attend the procedure. Her application and her lawyer's signature were sufficient. When the court called her and informed her that the marriage had been dissolved, she felt nothing. Emptiness. 5 years of her life ended with a single phone call and a stamp in her passport. Strange how quickly it can all end. In March, the criminal trial began. As the investigator had warned, the media blew the story out of proportion. The prosecutor's daughter miraculously survived an attack by her husband, a monster mother-in-law, a plan to seize the apartment, left to die in the forest. Details of a shocking case. Journalists besieged Catherine. She gave no comments. Only once, leaving the courthouse, she threw to the cameras, "I'm not a victim. I'm a survivor." Those are different things. The phrase spread across the internet. Catherine became a symbol. A woman who didn't break, didn't give up, stood her ground. Strangers from all over the country wrote to her, thanked her for her courage, told their stories, asked for advice. She couldn't reply to everyone. She didn't have the strength. But every such message reminded her she wasn't alone. The trial lasted almost 4 months. Hearing after hearing, testimony after testimony. Catherine testified 3 times, first as the victim, then answering defense questions, then giving additional explanations. Seeing Marcus and Dorothy behind bars was strange. They sat on the defendant's bench, pale, gaunt, in identical orange jumpsuits. Marcus had lost weight, dark circles lay under his eyes. Dorothy looked even worse, hunched, hands trembling, as if she had aged 20 years. When Catherine testified, Marcus stared at her without looking away. There was something incomprehensible in his gaze. Neither hatred nor remorse, rather, bewilderment. As if he still couldn't understand how his wife, quiet, compliant Catherine, had turned out to be stronger than him. Dorothy, by contrast, bored into her daughter-in-law with a hateful stare. Once she even tried to shout something, but a guard quickly shut her down. The defendant's lawyer, a balding man with an oily voice, tried to confuse Catherine, catch her in contradictions. "You claim you were forced into the car, but there are no witnesses to that. Perhaps you agreed to go yourself?" "I was threatened with problems for my father." "Threatened? With what exact words?" "You don't want your father to have problems, do you?" "A prosecutor, a prominent position, anything can happen." "And you took that as a threat?" "How else was I supposed to take it?" The lawyer switched tactics. "You say you were beaten. Why didn't you resist?" "I did resist. I tried to shield myself with my hands, but there were 2 of them and I was alone. However, you could have screamed, called for help. We were in the forest, 10 miles from the nearest housing. Who was I supposed to call?" The lawyer hesitated. The judge, an elderly woman with a tired face, impatiently tapped the gavel. "Does the defense have any further questions on the merits?" "No, Your Honor." "Then we move on to the next witness." There were many witnesses. Ranger Mike, the one who found Catherine on his porch, the ambulance paramedic, hospital doctors, the forensic expert who detailed the nature of the injuries, the bartender from the establishment where Marcus and his mother celebrated. The bartender's testimony made a particularly strong impression. "They came in around 10 in the evening," he said, a thin guy about 25. "Ordered whiskey, snacks, stayed until closing." "How did they behave?" the prosecutor asked. "Cheerful, laughing, clinking glasses. The man, this one," he pointed at Marcus, "said something like to freedom." And the woman replied, "Finally got rid of her." "Got rid of what?" "I don't know. I wasn't listening closely. But they were definitely celebrating something." Silence hung in the courtroom. Marcus lowered his head. Dorothy sat motionless, gripping the bars. The prosecutor continued. Did they say anything else? The woman said. The bartender hesitated. She said that in such cold, 2 hours at most. I even thought it was a strange phrase. And then I saw the news and understood. The room buzzed. The judge struck the gavel. Order in the court. Catherine sat motionless, feeling everything tighten inside. 2 hours at most. The mother-in-law had said it so calmly, as if she were talking about the weather, about the time it would take for her daughter-in-law to freeze to death. She turned and looked at Dorothy. She sat with a stone face, but her hands were shaking. You thought I would die, Catherine thought. You were so sure, and I survived. And now you will sit in prison, and I will live. This wasn't revenge. It was justice. In May, the prosecutor delivered the closing argument. Catherine listened, sitting in the front row, and it seemed to her that it was about someone else, about some other woman betrayed by her husband, someone they tried to kill. The defendants acted with special cruelty and cynicism, the prosecutor said. They planned the crime in advance, as confirmed by entries from the diary of Citizen Crawford. They chose a deserted place and time a winter night at a temperature of 4 degrees Fahrenheit. They inflicted multiple injuries on the victim and left her to die, confident that help would not come. He paused, scanning the room. After committing the crime, the defendants felt no remorse. On the contrary, they went to a bar and spent several hours celebrating, in their own words, freedom. They laughed and drank while their victim was dying in the snow. Dorothy jerked, as if she wanted to say something, but the escort placed a hand on her shoulder. Only by a miracle did the victim survive, the prosecutor continued. She walked several miles through a snow-covered forest with broken ribs and an injured leg. She found the strength to reach shelter and call for help. This speaks to extraordinary courage and a will to live. Catherine felt her mother squeeze her hand. She wasn't crying. The tears had long since run out. She was just listening. Taking into account the gravity of the offense, the nature of the injuries inflicted on the victim, as well as the lack of remorse on the part of the defendants, the prosecution requests the imposition of. Catherine held her breath. Crawford Marcus, 12 years of imprisonment in a maximum security correctional facility. Exclamations were heard in the courtroom. Marcus went even paler. His lips moved, but no sound came out. Crawford Dorothy, 11 years of imprisonment in a general regime correctional facility. Dorothy jumped up. This is unfair, she shouted. I'm an old woman. I'm 63 years old. I'll die there. Defendant, sit down. The judge struck the gavel. Escort. Dorothy was seated back down. She kept muttering something, but more quietly. The defendant's lawyer delivered the defense speech, spoke of mitigating circumstances, of a first offense, of Dorothy's health condition. He asked the court to consider that the defendants acted in a state of affect and had no intent to kill. Catherine listened and couldn't believe her ears. A state of affect? They drove her into the forest for half an hour, chose the location, planned everything in advance. The notebook was proof. What effect? The judge listened to the lawyer with an impassive face. Then she announced a recess until the next session for the delivery of the verdict. The verdict was announced a week later. The courtroom was packed. Journalists, onlookers, some people with signs in support of Catherine. She came with her parents, sat in the front row, and waited. Marcus and Dorothy were brought in under escort. They looked even worse than a week earlier. Earthy faces, lifeless eyes. A week of waiting for the verdict is an eternity in jail. The judge entered, everyone stood. The reading of the verdict began. Long, monotonous, full of legal terms. Catherine listened with half an ear, catching only the key phrases. To find guilty. Kidnapping committed by a group of persons by prior conspiracy. Intentional infliction of grievous bodily harm. Attempted murder. With special cruelty. Finally, the judge moved to the main point. To sentence Crawford Marcus to imprisonment for a term of 11 years, to be served in a maximum security correctional facility. Marcus covered his face with his hands. His shoulders shook whether from sobbing or from nervous laughter. To sentence Crawford Dorothy to imprisonment for a term of 9 years, to be served in a general regime correctional facility. Dorothy collapsed onto the bench as if the air had been let out of her. Her lips moved soundlessly. The verdict may be appealed within 10 days. Catherine didn't listen further. She looked at the two people behind bars, the man she had once married and the woman who wanted her dead. 11 and 9 years. 20 years between them. When they got out, if they got out, the world would be completely different. And she would be different. Her mother hugged her, whispering something in her ear. Her father sat beside her, his hand on her shoulder. Camera flashes clicked around them, journalists shouted questions. Catherine heard nothing. She thought about the snowy forest, the stars overhead, the cold that cut to the bone, about lying in the snow thinking she was dying. She didn't die. She survived. And now she would go on living. The convicted were led away. The courtroom gradually emptied. Catherine stepped out onto the courthouse steps, squinting in the bright May sun. After months of winter and early spring, the sun felt like a miracle, warm, gentle, promising something good. A young female journalist approached her, recorder in hand. "Catherine, may we have a few words?" Catherine wanted to refuse, as usual. But something stopped her. Maybe the sun. Maybe the relief after the verdict. Maybe simply fatigue from silence. "All right," she said. Briefly. "What do you feel now, after the verdict?" Catherine thought. "Relief," she finally answered. "And emptiness. And hope. All at once. Are you glad they received such sentences?" "Glad is the wrong word. I don't rejoice in others' misfortune. But I'm glad that justice prevailed. That the system works. That they answered for what they did." "What would you say to women who find themselves in a similar situation?" Catherine looked straight into the camera. "Don't stay silent. Don't endure it. Don't think everything will somehow fix itself. If you're hurting, if you're being abused, if you're being threatened, speak up. To parents, friends, the police, anyone. You're not alone. And you're stronger than you think." The journalist nodded and turned off the recorder. "Thank you and take care." "Thank you." Catherine walked down the steps to where her parents were waiting. Her father hugged her tightly, silently, the way only he could. Her mother wiped away tears. "Let's go home," Catherine said. "I'm tired." Summer passed like a blur. Catherine gradually recovered, physically and emotionally. Her ribs healed, her leg recovered, the headaches nearly stopped. Scars remained on her body and in her soul, but she learned to live with them. In July she returned to work. Her colleagues welcomed her warmly, some brought flowers, some silently shook her hand. No one asked unnecessary questions, everyone knew everything from the news. Work helped distract her. Numbers, reports, documents, all of it was familiar, predictable, safe. Catherine immersed herself in work and felt herself gradually returning to normal life. In August, her mother sold that apartment. A buyer was found quickly, a young couple with a child, who didn't care what had happened there before. For them it was just a home. Bright, spacious, in a good neighborhood. With the proceeds they bought a new apartment for Catherine. A one-bedroom, but cozy, in a new building on the other end of the city. No memories. No ghosts of the past. A clean slate. Catherine moved in September. The first night in the new apartment she didn't sleep. She sat by the window and looked at the city lights. She thought about how strangely life unfolds. A year ago she had been married, lived in a different house, been a different person. Now everything had changed. She had changed too. She had become tougher, more cautious, more distrustful, but stronger as well. She was no longer the naive girl who believed pretty words and ignored warning signs. She had learned to see people through, like her father. In October, investigator James Peterson called. "Catherine? Good afternoon. There's news on your case." "What news?" "The verdict has already taken effect." "It has, but the convicted filed an appeal. There was a hearing today." Catherine went cold. "And?" "The appeal was denied. The verdict stands." There was a smile in the investigator's voice. "You can sleep easy." Catherine exhaled. "Thank you for letting me know." "You're welcome. It's my job." He paused. "Catherine, may I say something off the record?" Go ahead. I've been working cases for 8 years. I've seen all kinds of things. But you're special. Not because you're a prosecutor's daughter, but because you didn't break. That's rare, and it's inspiring. Catherine felt a lump rise in her throat. Thank you, James. Truly, thank you. Good luck with everything. He hung up. Catherine sat for a long time with the phone in her hands, looking out the window at the autumn city. The appeal was denied. The verdict was final. Marcus would serve 11 years. Dorothy 9. That's a very, very long time. She stood up, went to the mirror, and looked at her reflection. A 29-year-old woman with a short haircut. She had cut off her regrown hair, craving change with serious eyes and a faint scar above her eyebrow. You did it, she said to her reflection. You did it. The reflection smiled back. A year passed, then another. Catherine lived, worked, met friends, visited her parents, began seeing a therapist, sorting through what had happened, learning to trust people again. It wasn't easy, but she tried. Sometimes she had nightmares. A snowy forest, cold, stars overhead. She woke in a cold sweat, couldn't fall asleep for a long time. But over time the nightmares came less often. Memory loosened its grip. On the 3rd anniversary of that day, January 20th, Catherine went to the forest. The very forest where she had been left to die. She found the spot, the clearing where the car had stood, and stood there for a long time, looking at the trees. It was cold, snow was falling. Just like then. But now she was in a warm jacket, winter boots, with a thermos of hot tea in her backpack. And most importantly, she was there of her own free will. Not a victim, but a victor. I survived, she said aloud. Her voice echoed among the trees. I survived, and I live. She took a candle from her pocket, lit it, and placed it in the snow. A small flame trembled in the wind, but did not go out. This is not a monument, Catherine continued. It's a reminder. To myself. That I am stronger than I thought. That you must never give up. She stood there a little longer, looking at the candle flame. Then she turned and walked to the car. The forest remained behind her, silent, white, indifferent. Ahead was life. A year later, Catherine met Andrew. He worked in a neighboring office. A programmer, quiet, a little shy. They ran into each other in the elevator, started talking, exchanged numbers. First date, second, third. Catherine didn't rush. She remembered how her previous marriage had ended and had no intention of repeating mistakes. She watched Andrew, studied him, how he behaved under stress, how he treated other people, how he spoke about his exes. Andrew passed the test. He was calm, reliable, without a hidden agenda. He didn't try to seem better than he was. He didn't lie or manipulate. He was simply himself. And that was enough. After 6 months they moved in together. A year later Andrew proposed. Simply, without pomp, over dinner at home. Catherine said yes. And this time she knew she wasn't wrong. The wedding was small, only the closest people. Catherine's parents, Andrew's parents, a few friends. No grand scale, no hundreds of guests. Just 2 people who decided to be together. After the ceremony, Robert pulled his daughter aside. So, sweetheart, he said. This time, it seems, a good choice. You think? I'm sure. He hugged her. I'm happy for you, Catherine. You earned your happiness. Thank you, Dad, for everything. They stood like that for a moment, father and daughter, embracing. Around them guests laughed and talked. Catherine thought about the long road she had traveled from a naive girl who believed in a fairy tale to an adult woman who knows the value of real happiness. She also thought about Marcus, somewhere there in a maximum security colony, serving his sentence, and about Dorothy, in another colony, on the other side of the country. They were imprisoned, and she was living. She was happy. Building a new family. That was the best revenge. Not hatred, not gloating. Just life. A full, real, happy life. Epilogue. 6 years had passed since that January day. Catherine was 35. She had a loving husband, a 2-year-old daughter, Alice, a spacious apartment in a good neighborhood, an interesting job. Everything she had once dreamed of. Marcus still had 5 years left to serve. Dorothy died in prison. A heart attack in her 7th year of incarceration. Catherine learned about it from the news and felt nothing. No joy, no pity. Emptiness. Sometimes she thought, what if back then, 6 years ago, she hadn't made it to the ranger's cabin? What if her strength had run out halfway? What if she had frozen there, in the snow, under indifferent stars? But those thoughts came less and less often, because she had made it, because she survived, because she turned out to be stronger than everyone thought and stronger than she herself had thought. That morning, an ordinary Saturday morning, Catherine woke up early. Andrew was still asleep, her daughter was fussing in her crib. Outside, the winter sun was shining. Catherine got up, walked to the window, and looked for a long time at the snow-covered city. She thought about how strange life is. It beats you, breaks you, throws you into the snow and walks away, certain you won't get up. And you get up, walk, fall, and get up again. Because you are not a victim. You are a survivor. Those are different things. Mom. Alice called from her room. Mom, come here. Catherine smiled and went to her daughter. Life went on.